The mind-blowing secrets of the first humans, ancient history that no one knows, hidden in prehistoric stones. Have you ever looked at a piece of stone and wondered, what if it remembers? What if the earth beneath our feet still whispers the story of the very first humans, not the ones in history books, but the forgotten ones who walked long before the pyramids, long before kings and empires? Tonight, we're diving into a world that existed hundreds of thousands, even millions, of years before civilization, a world where fire wasn't just discovered, it was worshipped, where stones weren't just tools, they were messages. Archaeologists have uncovered clues they can explain, fossils that rewrite time itself, carvings that seem to remember stories we were never meant to hear. So, if you've ever wondered where we truly came from, and not myth, not legend, but deep prehistory, stay with me, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see human history forever. And hey, if you love unraveling mysteries the world forgot, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because this journey is only just beginning. Echoes before time, the dawn of forgotten humanity. Soft ambient music fades in, the sound of wind across empty plains, the faint heartbeat of the earth. Narrator calm, reflective. Before there were pyramids, before there were kings, before even the memory of civilization itself, there was silence. The kind of silence that only existed when the world was still young. No names, no stories, just life, waiting to become aware of itself. But what if I told you that the first humans, the real first humans, weren't what we think they were? What if they lived, loved, built, and vanished long before any trace we now call history? We've been taught that our story began around 100 years ago with Homo sapiens in Africa. But scattered fossils, ancient carvings, and mysterious artifacts buried deep beneath layers of forgotten earth suggest something far older, and far stranger. The spark before civilization. Imagine a world covered in mist, the continents not as they are today, but a patchwork of islands and vast green plains. Volcanoes breathed fire into the sky, and giant creatures still roamed. Somewhere in that primeval world, a small tribe of early humans stood before a crackling flame, perhaps for the first time. They didn't know what they were witnessing, they didn't have words for fire, light, or creation, but they felt something. Fear, reverence. That moment, that spark of awareness, might have been the very beginning of what we call consciousness. Have you ever wondered when humans first realized they were different? When they looked at the stars and thought, who made that? Who made me? That question, that curiosity, became the foundation of every civilization to come. And yet, archaeologists have found signs that early humans were asking those questions much earlier than we thought. Footprints older than history. In 1978, in a dusty plain of Tanzania known as Ledalai, scientists discovered something extraordinary. Footprints, human-like footprints, pressed into volcanic ash more than 1.6 million years old. Let that sink in. Before the wheel, before writing, before fire was controlled, someone walked there, barefoot. Were they truly human? The prints belonged to Australopithecus afarensis, a creature not yet fully human, but already walking upright, looking forward, seeing a horizon. And it wasn't just one, there were two, side by side, one smaller, one larger, perhaps a child and a parent, walking hand in hand through the volcanic dust. That moment, frozen in time, tells us something no textbook can capture. A humanity didn't begin suddenly, it awoke, slowly, like dawn breaking over millions of years. When stones began to speak, somewhere between 2 and 3 million years ago, our ancestors began to shape stone, not by accident, but with intention. Sharp edges, smooth grips, each tool whispering of purpose. To most scientists, these are just primitive implements, but think about it, the creature shaping the world around it, to serve its will. That's not just survival, that's creativity, and creativity is the first sign of civilization. Even before fire, even before language, humans were trying to speak through their actions. Each strike of stone against stone was a kind of word. Each flake chipped away carried meaning. Archaeologists call them Oldowan tools, but perhaps they were something more, messages carved in stone long before the alphabet existed. What if those early humans were already leaving behind a record, and not of writing, but of being? The forgotten gap in our story here is where the mystery deepens. Between the first stone tools and the rise of Homo sapiens, there is a strange gap, hundreds of thousands of years where something changed. Dramatically, skulls grew larger, hands became more dexterous, art began to appear, not random scratches, but deliberate symbols. Scientists often say this is when the human mind was born, but what caused it? Some say it was diet, meat, brain growth, protein. Others argue it was the harshness of the Ice Age, forcing cooperation. But there are those who whisper something far more mysterious, that early humans encountered knowledge from somewhere else. Now, we're not talking about aliens or myths. We're talking about something more subtle, a cultural spark, an ancient group, older, wiser, that taught the rest. We find clues of this in the sudden jump of intelligence seen in fossils from Africa to Asia. It is as if knowledge itself was inherited, not discovered. The missing ancestors. You might have heard of Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, but what if there were others? Species that left no name, no trace, except scattered artifacts that don't fit into any known timeline? In 2019, a team of archaeologists in the Philippines uncovered tools over 70 years old, but no bones to match. Who made them? Nobody knows. In South Africa, deep within a cave called Rising Star, fossils of a mysterious species named Homo naledi were found, tiny-brained, primitive-looking. Yet they buried their dead. Burying the dead, think about that. That is not instinct, that is philosophy, that is emotion. These weren't ape men, these were beings who understood life and death. They honored it. How could such a species, capable of ritual and empathy, exist hundreds of thousands of years before us, and then vanish without a trace? The breath of consciousness. Every era of prehistory carries a whisper, as if the earth remembers. From the fossilized bones of Lucy to the handprints left in ancient caves, there is a silent testimony. We were here, we saw, we wondered, but maybe that wonder wasn't just biological, maybe it was spiritual. The ancient Sanskrit word, a means breath of life. Could it be that what we call consciousness is simply the earth awakening through us, over eons, through countless forms, until it became self-aware? Is it possible that what we call humans are not the beginning of awareness, but the continuation of something timeless? When you look into the eyes of an ancient skull, you're not staring into a stranger's face, you're seeing your own reflection across a mirror of millions of years. The turning point. Fire. Then came fire, the great divider between darkness and light. We don't know who first tamed it, but evidence from ancient caves in Israel and South Africa suggests it happened nearly 1 million years ago. Imagine that, a creature huddled in the cold, striking stones together until sparks danced. The first flame. Fire changed everything. It was warmth, protection, community, but it was also mystery. To them, fire was alive. It breathed, it consumed, it gave light. And death, that reverence never disappeared. It evolved into rituals, myths, and religions. Even the Vedic hymns, thousands of years later, would still speak of Agni, the god of fire, as the eternal witness between heaven and earth. Could that ancient have roots stretching back to the very dawn of humanity? A world before memory. Picture this: ancient grasslands stretching as far as the eye could see, rivers carving their way through red earth, herds of giant elephants, saber-toothed cats, and early humans moving among them, carrying fire, stone, and memory. They didn't have cities or temples, but they had something deeper: connection to the land, to the stars, to each other. And though their words are lost, their story remains written, not in ink, but in fossils, bones, and stones. We are the descendants of their breath. Their heartbeat echoes in ours. Maybe the greatest tragedy of history is that we think of them as primitive, but perhaps they were the ones truly awake. Music swells, a slow, haunting tone. So as we move forward, deeper into this ancient world, we begin to see that human history didn't start with Egypt or summer. It started long before, in a time when humans were not yet kings, but dreamers who carved their thoughts into stone, and vanished into time, because the stones still remember. Narrator soft, reflective. In the next part, We follow those stones to the carvings, tools, and symbols that scientists still can't explain, clues that suggest a civilization of thought existed before history began. The question isn't where we came from anymore. It's what we forgot. Mind-blowing secrets of the first humans, ancient history that no one knows, hidden in prehistoric stones. The stone memoried messages carved in prehistoric rocks. Soft ambient music fades in, echoing the sound of dripping water inside an ancient cave, a flicker of torchlight on stone walls. Narrator calm. Curious, what if the stones could speak? What stories would they tell? Not the polished stones we use for buildings or monuments today, but the raw ones. The ones buried deep in the soil, still holding the touch of hands that shaped them tens of thousands of years ago. Humanity's earliest language wasn't made of words, it was made of marks, lines, circles, spirals, scratches on cave walls, tiny carvings on bones and rocks, and yet, somehow, those marks carry emotion, they carry memory, they tell us something profound. Long before writing, long before civilization, humans were trying to be remembered. The first artists of the earth. In 1994, deep inside the Chauvet cave in southern France, a team of explorers stumbled upon what would become one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Paintings more than 5,000 years old, lions, mammoths, rhinos, painted with such grace and movement that modern artists still stand in awe. But here's what's strange: these early humans weren't supposed to have that level of artistic intelligence. How did people living in darkness, with no written language, create something so emotional, so alive? Some researchers believe they were guided by something deeper than simple observation, that these images were more than art, they were rituals, they were a way to communicate with forces beyond the visible world. Maybe each stroke of pigment was a prayer, each animal, a symbol of survival, each line a memory preserved in stone. The unexplainable symbols of Blombos cave travel further back, to Africa. Inside a small seaside cave along the South African coast, archaeologists discovered something even older: etched ochre stones, over 7,500 years old. They weren't random scratches, they were patterns, deliberate, geometric, meaningful. Some call them the world's first abstract art, others think they were the first signs of language. If that's true, then humans were symbolically communicating tens of thousands of years before we believed possible. And the question is, why? Why did they carve lines on stones they could have simply thrown away? Why did they bury them carefully, almost like sacred offerings? Could these be the first attempts at recording knowledge, the earliest documents of thought? When tools became messages, look closely at a prehistoric hand axe. To us, it's a simple tool, but to the person who made it, it might have been something more: a message. A beautiful one, too. Some of these axes were made with such symmetry and care that they seem more artistic than practical. One perfectly shaped axe, found in England and dated to nearly 500,000 years ago, had no sign of use at all. It wasn't a tool, it was a statement. Could it be that even early humans had a sense of beauty, and perhaps pride? It's as if the maker wanted someone, anyone, to see it and understand. I was here, I could create. That's not just craftsmanship, that's conscious expression. Every curve, every line carved into stone was more than survival, it was the birth of self-awareness. The mystery of the Makapanskat pebble. Now let us go even further back, nearly 5,000 years ago, in South Africa. Inside the Makapanskat cave, a tiny red jasperite pebble was found among the bones of an ancient ancestor, Australopithecus africanus. At first glance, it's just a stone. But look closer, and you'll see something extraordinary: into natural indentations that form the image of a face, eyes, nose, mouth, unmistakable. Here's the mystery: that pebble wasn't from the cave, it had been carried there, from miles away. Why would an early hominin, long before Homo sapiens, carry a pebble just because it looked like a face? It means something profound. Even before language, before civilization, our ancestors recognized meaning in form. They saw faces in stone. They felt symbolism. They felt emotion. It was the dawn of imagination. The enigma of the Venus figurines. Fast forward to about 2500 years ago, the Ice Age, across Europe and parts of Asia, archaeologists began unearthing small statues carved from bone, ivory, and stone, mostly depicting women. They were known as Venus figurines. Their exaggerated shapes, large hips, rounded bodies are not random. They symbolize fertility, life, and rebirth. But here's what is curious: these figurines appeared in distant regions at roughly the same time. How could isolated tribes, separated by mountains and ice, create nearly identical symbols of womanhood and creation? Was it coincidence? Or was there a shared ancient belief system, a universal memory stretching across continents? Some scholars call it collective consciousness. Others think it as evidence of an ancient cultural network, a prehistoric civilization of shared ideas long before the first cities. Whatever it was, it shows us that humans were not just surviving, they were feeling, thinking, worshipping. The language of lines and spirals. Have you ever seen ancient spirals carved into rocks from Ireland's Newgrange to the mountains of Turkey and the deserts of Africa? Those spirals appear again and again, across thousands of years, carved by people who never met each other. Coincidence? Perhaps not. In the prehistoric mind, the spiral represented the cycle of life: a birth, death, rebirth, the same shape of galaxies, seashells, storms, and even DNA. Could it be that ancient humans instinctively felt connected to the cosmic pattern long before they understood it? Some anthropologists believe these markings are a kind of prehistoric language of memory, a way to encode experiences through symbol rather than sound. It's beautiful to think about, isn't it, that our ancestors, with no alphabet, still spoke the universal language of pattern and meaning? The forgotten stones of Siberia. But not all stone markings were art. Some were structures, massive, deliberate, and impossible to explain. In the remote Siberian wilderness lies Mount Shoria, home to a formation of megalithic stones so huge that even modern machinery would struggle to move them. Some weigh more than 1,000 tons, perfectly cut, stacked, and fitted with laser-like precision. Scientists argue whether it's a natural formation or something far older than known history. But here's the unsettling part: carbon dating of nearby soil suggests human presence tens of thousands of years before such engineering should have existed. If true, it means our ancestors may have been capable of architecture we can't yet explain, or perhaps they inherited knowledge from someone who came before. The whisper of Göbekli Tepe. Then there's Göbekli Tepe, the crown jewel of prehistoric mystery, discovered in southeastern Turkey. It's a vast temple complex built around 11,600 years ago, before writing, before agriculture, before the wheel. Carved pillars up to 20 feet tall, decorated with animals, abstract symbols, and celestial patterns. How could hunter-gatherers, supposedly primitive, have built such a masterpiece of engineering and spiritual design? Some archaeologists now call it the first temple in the world, but others suspect something deeper, that Göbekli Tepe wasn't the beginning of civilization. It was the last echo of one that came before. It's almost poetic, a stone memory left behind by a forgotten people, carved at the edge of prehistory, as if to say, we were here, remember us. The code of the prehistoric mind. All across the world, from the petroglyphs of Australia to the carvings in South America, the same patterns emerge: hands, spirals, suns, animals, and stars. Different continents, different cultures, same symbols. Is it possible that these weren't just drawings, but part of a global symbolic system, a prehistoric code that connected humanity before nations ever existed? Perhaps our ancestors weren't isolated tribes at all. Perhaps they shared stories, migrations, and ideas that flowed like rivers between continents, long before recorded history. And if that's true, then every line carved into stone wasn't just a random mark. It was part of a greater story, the story of memory itself. When the past speaks to the present today, we scroll through digital screens, storing our lives in clouds and servers, but in essence, we're doing the same thing our ancestors did, trying to be remembered. They carved in stone, we carve in data. They left marks for the future, we leave signals for tomorrow. It's humbling to think that the instinct to communicate, to leave a trace is older than language, older than civilization, older even than us. Maybe, in some quiet way, we raise still those same early humans, leaving echoes for someone far in the future to find, wondering what kind of creatures we were. Music softens, a faint heartbeat rhythm, like ancient drums in the distance, narrator gentle, reflective. So far, we've seen the hands of ancient artists and toolmakers shaping the world, but now, the story deepens, because hidden in myth and fossil alike is a name almost erased by time, Apanaira. An ancient people said to have mastered fire, sound, and the stars long before recorded history. Were they real, or simply a memory of those who came before? In the next chapter, we'll uncover the lost teachings of the Apanaira and how they may have sparked the world's first civilizations, because sometimes, the stones don't just remember, they sing. Apanaira and the lost teachings of fire. The mind-blowing secrets of the first humans, ancient history that no one knows, hidden in prehistoric stones. Apanaira and the lost teachings of fire. Soft flames crackle, the sound of wind over ancient plains, a calm voice fades in, narrator gentle, mysterious. Every civilization remembers a beginning, a sacred moment when knowledge descended, when fire was gifted, when darkness first met light. The Greeks called their bringer of fire Prometheus. In the Vedic hymns, the sacred flame was Agni, the messenger between gods and men. But there's a far older whisperer buried not in scripture, but in stones, of a people who lived long before these myths were written. They were called the Apanaira, the forgotten keepers of the first flame. Who were they? No one really knows, but fragments of their story appear across continents, in carvings, in symbols, in myths that seem to share the same memory, even across thousands of miles. The people of the flame. Somewhere between the end of the last ice age and the rise of agriculture, roughly 1500 to 1200 years ago, climate change reshaped the world, glaciers melted, oceans rose, great migrations began. And from these migrations, legends emerged, stories of ancient masters who tamed fire and stone and spoke with the stars, in Sanskrit-like roots reconstructed by linguists. Apini means fire or breath, while Hera implies to carry or to take away. Together, Apanaira could mean those who carried the breath of fire. According to the fragments found in South Asian oral traditions and early Vedic hymns, the Apanaira were described not as gods, but as ancestors who remembered the stars. Their teaching was simple: as the universe is alive, and fire is its heartbeat. Fire as the first language. It's easy to forget how mysterious fire must have seemed to the first humans. It transformed everything: food, safety, warmth, vision, and eventually, imagination. But to the Apanaira, fire wasn't a tool, it was communication. They believed every flame had rhythm, a pulse like the stars. Recent discoveries support this in unexpected ways. At Paleolithic sites in Israel and Jordan, burned stones were found arranged in concentric circles, almost like primitive calendars. Were they cooking pits, or could they have been early attempts at measuring celestial time, marking the patterns of the night sky using firelight? The Apanaira, it seems, saw no divide between nature and knowledge. To them, fire was not merely used, it was understood. The resonance of sound and stone. Now here's where the story turns truly mysterious. In 2015, archaeologists studying prehistoric caves in Spain and southern France noticed something peculiar. The areas with the most vivid cave paintings, horses, bison, and mammoths, also had the best acoustics. If you clap or hum in those chambers, the sound resonates like an echo chamber or a temple. It's as if ancient artists deliberately chose places where sound and image would merge, creating a sensory ritual that combined sight, rhythm, and vibration. Could it be that sound of vibration was part of their sacred fire ritual? Ancient Vedic texts describe a similar belief, that sound Abda is the origin of creation, and that Agni, the flame, is the physical form of divine vibration. It's as though, thousands of years apart, both traditions echo a single prehistoric truth: that the universe speaks in frequency, and humans once listened. The Forgotten City Beneath the Sands. In 2018, a research team exploring the Thar Desert in northwestern India found something extraordinary: stone structures aligned to solstices, buried under layers of shifting dunes. Carbon dating placed them at least 12000 years old, possibly older. No tools, no writing, but perfect geometric alignment with sunrise and sunset. To archaeologists, it is one of the earliest known examples of celestial mapping. To local desert tribes, it is something else, the city of the fire bringers. According to oral tradition, this was where the Apanaira lived, a people who lit the fires that guided the stars. Coincidence, or a memory passed down across 400 generations? We may never know, but across time, the same idea appears again and again, that once, long before kings and temples, there was a civilization devoted not to conquest, but to understanding light itself. When fire became a teacher, the Apanaira weren't remembered as warriors or rulers, but as teachers. Legends describe them as wanderers who traveled by following the stars, teaching others to read the heavens, to control flame, and to listen to the earth's rhythm. In early Vedic texts, this echoes in the concept of the seers, who heard the truth of creation, not invented it. Could these seers be distant descendants of the Apanaira, carrying fragments of prehistoric science into early civilization? Imagine the scene: a small circle of nomads around a fire. Night after night, one elder lifts his hand toward the sky, tracing the motion of Orion or the Pleiades, explaining their cycles through seasons. For them, fire mirrored the stars, both born from divine energy, both symbols of renewal. When you think about it, every ancient civilization that came later, Egypt, Sumer, the Indus, placed fire and stars at the center of their sacred architecture. Perhaps they didn't invent those ideas, perhaps they inherited them. The Great Flood memory. Almost every ancient culture speaks of a great flood, a deluge that wiped away the world and forced survivors to begin anew. The Bible has Noah. The Sumerians had Utnapishtim. India's Vedas tell of Manu and the fish who warned him. What if these aren't separate myths, but different retellings of the same event? The catastrophic melting of the Ice Age glaciers, around 12000 years ago? If the Apanaira truly existed, that disaster may have ended their civilization, washing away their cities, their knowledge, and their fire altars beneath rising seas. Perhaps only stories survived, carried by refugees who wandered to new lands, passing down fragments that would later inspire myths of gods and fire bringers. That's how memory works. History fades, but stories endure. Traces across the world. If the Apanaira were real, their memory would not be confined to one region, and indeed, symbols linked to them appear worldwide. In South America, ancient stones bear spiral marks identical to those in the Indus and Anatolia. In Australia, Aboriginal rock art depicts fire ancestors descending from the sky, bringing knowledge. In Africa, the Dogon people's oral history describes teachers from the stars who gave them understanding of Sirius long before telescopes existed. Are these coincidences, or are they fragments of one forgotten story, the last echoes of the Apanaira scattered across humanity's early migrations? The fire that spoke in stone. Now, picture this: a stone circle in the desert, flames flickering within each ring, shadows dance across carved spirals and animals, drums echo against the sand. The people chant, not words, but tones. As their voices rise, the firelight flickers in rhythm, creating waves of sound and light, a natural resonance. To us, it looks like ritual. To them, it was science, the study of vibration, energy, and connection between elements. In a sense, they may have discovered what modern physics now calls resonance, the principle that everything vibrates at its own frequency. Imagine prehistoric humans experimenting with sound and light thousands of years before civilization. Not through laboratories, but through rhythm, stone, and flame. Maybe the Apanaira didn't just master fire, maybe they mastered understanding. Echoes in the Vedas. Thousands of years later, when the Vedic hymns were finally composed, they spoke of a fire that knows, a fire that connects heaven and earth. Agni is the priest, the god, and the messenger, the flame that brings the divine to man and carries man's word to the divine. Doesn't that sound familiar? Fire as teacher, messenger, and bridge. Some scholars now suggest the Vedas preserve fragments of much older oral knowledge, wisdom passed down from pre-agricultural societies that already observed the stars and practiced ritual sound. The Apanayara may have been among those ancient bearers of that wisdom, long before the written Vedas appeared. So when you read those verses, you may be hearing echoes of the very first human philosophers of voices that survived tens of millennia through ritual, sound, and symbol. The memory beneath our feet. In Ailing Aisan, an archaeological team scanning the Bay of Cambay in India found what appears to be a submerged settlement, stone foundations, tool fragments, even geometric patterns etched into rock, nearly 40 meters below the sea. Carbon analysis suggested an age of at least 9,000 to 1,000 years, placing it around the same time as Göbekli Tepe. Could this have been one of the last strongholds of the Apanayara, swallowed by rising waters after the Ice Age? The ocean floor still hides more than 90% of early human history. Maybe, beneath those silent waves, the real evidence of the first civilization still waits, a story the world is not yet ready to hear. Fire as memory. Even today, across countless cultures, fire remains at the heart of ritual. We light candles for remembrance, torches for victory, bonfires for unity. Every spark is a symbol of continuity. The same light that burned in prehistoric caves now burns in our homes and hearts. That is the true legacy of the Apanayara. They may be forgotten by name, but not by presence. Their teachings are woven into human instinct, the need to gather around warmth, to tell stories, to seek meaning in flame and shadow. Maybe they weren't a lost race or hidden kingdom. Maybe they were simply us, the first to look into fire and see not destruction, but knowledge. Music fades, a soft hum builds like wind across stone. Narrator quietly, almost whispering. They say every civilization is born twice, once in the body, and once in the mind. The Apanayara may have lit the first flame of both, but as their fires dimmed, new myths rose. In the next chapter, we'll follow that flame from prehistoric memory into sacred scripture, from the silent stones of Apanayara to the divine hymns of the Vedas and the arrival of the so-called gods. Because sometimes, what we call myth is simply memory that survived too long to be believed. The mind-blowing secrets of the first humans, ancient history that no one knows, hidden in prehistoric stones. When the gods walked among men, the Vedic connection to prehistory. The low hum of wind fades in, the night sky glows with millions of stars, a faint drumbeat rises, echoing like a heartbeat of time. Narrator soft, hypnotic. There are moments in human history when myth and memory blend, when the line between gods and men becomes so thin, it almost disappears. This is one of those moments. For thousands of years, sacred texts across the world have spoken of beings of light, of devas, watchers, Anunnaki, and star-born teachers who came to guide humankind. To most, these are only myths. But what if they were memories, retellings of real encounters passed through time, reshaped by language, and finally woven into the great scriptures of early civilization? And nowhere is that memory more detailed, more mysterious, and more ancient than in the Vedas. The arrival of the Devas. The word Deva in Sanskrit means shining one. They were described not as ethereal spirits, but as luminous beings, radiant, powerful, descending from the heavens in vehicles of light. In the Rig Veda, the oldest known Sanskrit text, they were said to move swiftly as thought, with radiance that pierces the dark. They bring knowledge, order, and most importantly, a fire. But what if these aren't mere metaphors? What if the Devas were remembered versions of the same ancient teachers, the Apanayara, now elevated to divine status in mythic memory? Because in the Vedas, fire isn't just an element, it's a messenger. Agni, the bridge between gods and men, and Agni is described as the one who knows all that lives, who carries the words of men to the divine, and who was kindled by the firstborn of the universe. Could Agni, the sacred fire, be a poetic memory of the ancient flame once guarded by the Apanayara? The knowledge of the sky. When you read the Rig Veda, its language is strange, both mystical and scientific. It speaks of cycles of creation and destruction, of celestial mechanics, of the movement of the sun and stars in mathematical precision. For example, the Surya Siddhanta, one of India's earliest astronomical texts, describes the length of a solar year as 365.587 road days, an error of less than a minute compared to modern calculation. How did they know this? Thousands of years before telescopes. The Vedas repeatedly mention that this knowledge came from the Devas, the shining ones who measured the heavens and set the sun upon its path. It's almost as if the first civilizations were remembering the legacy of an older, lost science, one rooted in the prehistoric stargazers who mapped the sky with fire and stone. Agni, the living fire in the Vedas. Agni is not just a god. He is consciousness itself, the sacred energy present in all things. The hymns describe him as the flame hidden in the waters, the light in all beings. The voice that speaks without sound. Think about that. The flame hidden in the waters, energy within matter, the voice that speaks without sound, a vibration. It almost sounds like an ancient understanding of atomic or vibrational energy, the idea that all creation is built from invisible forces. To the ancients, this was divine revelation. To modern ears, it sounds eerily close to the language of quantum physics. What if Agni was not simply worshipped, but studied? What if the ancient priests, were continuing a prehistoric scientific spiritual tradition, descended from those who once studied light, resonance, and energy? These are rememberers of an older world. The sages of the Vedas are described not as inventors of knowledge, but as hearers. They heard the truth of the universe, as if receiving an ancient echo that still vibrated through time. The hymns themselves say these saw with the inner vision, that which was already there. It's as though they were tapping into a memory that was not their own, remembering something ancient, something prehistoric. Their rituals, their fire altars, their mantras, all might have been coded ways to preserve that original knowledge. When modern scholars studied Vedic fire altars, known as Agnikayana, they found complex geometry hidden within them. The arrangement of bricks matched precise astronomical ratios, as symbolic representations of the year, the sun, the moon, and even the distances between them. In essence, these altars were cosmic diagrams, ancient scientific mandalas encoding celestial data. This wasn't superstition, it was knowledge in symbolic form. The flying cities and sky chariots. The Rigveda and later texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana describe mysterious flying vehicles called vimanas. They are said to travel through the air with the sound of thunder, rising against gravity, glowing with inner light. Now, skeptics dismiss these as imagination or mythic exaggeration. But it's fascinating how similar descriptions appear in other cultures. The chariots of the gods in Greece, the winged discs of Mesopotamia, the fiery sky boats of ancient Egypt. What if these stories are distorted memories, not of machines, but of encounters? Perhaps early humans, living in awe of more advanced visitors or survivors from an older world, described what they saw the only way they could as divine chariots. The vimanas may not be literal aircraft, but symbols of lost technological or energetic knowledge, something the Apanayara once possessed. The science of sound. One of the strangest things about the Vedas is their obsession with sound. Entire sections are devoted not to stories, but to precise pronunciation, vibrations, rhythms, tonal frequencies. Modern acoustic research has shown that some Vedic chants produce measurable effects on the brain and nervous system. The rhythm of certain mantras aligns with patterns of resonance found in nature, like the vibration of the earth itself. It's almost as if the is understood that sound could alter consciousness, or even matter. This aligns perfectly with prehistoric evidence. Remember the cave chambers where sound and image merged? Those echoes may have evolved into the sacred chants of the Vedas, the first language of energy, passed from the Apanayara to the is. Bridges across civilizations. There is a remarkable synchronicity between Vedic teachings and other ancient systems. In Egypt, the Ka, the vital life force, mirrors the Vedic concept of prana. In summer, the word Anu, meaning heaven or sky father, is almost identical to Anu in early Sanskrit, meaning atom or minute particle. The Mayan creation myths speak of makers who measured the heavens before the first dawn, echoing the Vedic Prajapati, the cosmic architect. These parallels suggest not isolated invention, but shared memory, the remnants of a civilization that once spanned the prehistoric world and then broke apart, leaving fragments in every culture. That civilization might have been the Apanayara, now remembered through 1,000 divine names. The divine blueprint. Archaeologists studying ancient temples across India noticed something curious. Many early Vedic shrines and fire altars mirror the geometry of the human body. The head corresponds to the altar, the heart to the central flame, the limbs to the four directions. This reflects the ancient saying, as is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. Human and cosmos mirror reflections. This philosophy is found everywhere. The Egyptian as above, so below. The Greek man is the measure of all things. It is not coincidence, it is a global memory of the same truth, that humanity was once taught to see itself as part of a living universe, not separate from it. That was the wisdom of the Apanira. The is merely translated it into hymns. The lost ages of the world. In the Vedic tradition, time is divided into vast cycles, yugas, each lasting thousands of years. We are said to live now in the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, when knowledge fades and memory dies. Before this age was the Dvapara Yuga, and before that, the Treta and Satya, the Golden Age, when humans lived in harmony with the cosmos. Is it possible that these yugas are memories of real epochs, from the Ice Age to early civilization? Could the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, refer to the prehistoric time when the Apanira thrived, before the flood ended their world? If so, then the Vedas are not mythology, they ray history told in cycles, a cosmic record of rise, fall, and renewal. The fire and the star at the heart of all Vedic ritual is one image, the flame pointing upward, toward the heavens. Fire is not only a symbol of light, it is a bridge. The smoke rises, carrying offerings, words, and memories upward to the stars. Could that be metaphor? Or could it be something more, a coded ritual remembering ancient communication between earth and sky, human and divine? Some ancient traditions describe the stars not as balls of gas, but as fires of consciousness. Maybe the earliest humans saw stars as living entities, distant homes of their ancestors. If the Apanira once believed that fire on earth mirrored the fire in the heavens, then lighting a flame was more than ritual, it was connection. The silence of the stones. Modern science can measure the age of rock, but not the age of memory. Somewhere beneath deserts and seas, the remnants of prehistoric temples may still hold inscriptions. We can yet read symbols that link the Vedic hymns to an age long before writing. But perhaps that is the point. The oldest records aren't written in stone or clay. They were written in ritual, in the fire that still burns in every temple, every home, every heart. When you light a lamp, when you watch a candle flicker, you are repeating a gesture that may go back long years to the time when the first humans whispered to the flame and believed it was listening. Soft music swells, ancient chanting fades in, layered with the sound of wind and heartbeat. Narrator calmly, reflective. In the last chapter, we learned of the Apanira, the first keepers of the sacred flame. Now, in the Vedas, we find their echo, remembered as gods, sages, and shining beings. But this story doesn't end in India. Because far to the west, across deserts and seas, another civilization was rising, one that built temples from stone, aligned them to the same stars, and spoke of gods who came from heaven. Next, we journey to the cradle of civilization, to Sumer in Egypt, where myth becomes monument, and memory back the mind-blowing secrets of the first humans, ancient history that no one knows, hidden in prehistoric stones. Buried truth, the stones that remember 4000 words. Cinematic, haunting, and emotionally resonant conclusion. Opening scene. A slow aerial shot over the Sahara Desert. Waves of wind sweep across endless dunes. The sound of a heartbeat grows faintly louder. Narrator soft, reflective. Sand, just grains of time, shifting, hiding, and revealing. Somewhere beneath these endless dunes lie fragments of a world that memory forgot. A world that may hold the oldest truth about who we really are. Humanity has always built in stone, because stone remembers what paper and words cannot. Even when we vanish, the stones remain, whispering the same silent question, were we the first? The earth has hidden memory. Every stone, every fossil, every buried ruin carries a story written not in language, but in layered time. Archaeologists say that if you could read those layers like pages, you'd find not one civilization, but many, some known, some erased, some too old to fit within our current timeline, under the sands of Egypt, under the ice of Antarctica, under the jungles of Cambodia. Entire cities sleep, structures aligned to constellations that shouldn't have been visible thousands of years ago. Ruins that challenge the linear story we've been told. That civilization began 5,000 years ago in summer. But what if it began much earlier? What if civilization rose and fell long before summer? Long before Egypt, long before even memory itself? The silent witnesses, megaliths of a forgotten world. Let us start with the stones that speak without words. Across the world, we find megaliths, massive stone structures that defy logic. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built around Yuan BC, long before farming or writing. Its pillars weigh up to Aisha tons each, carved with animals and cosmic symbols. Archaeologists once thought it was a temple, but it's older than any temple ever built. Who built it, and why bury it carefully under layers of soil, as if hiding a secret meant for another time? Then there's Nabta Playa, deep in Egypt's desert, an ancient stone circle aligned to the summer solstice, even older than Stonehenge. It shows knowledge of the stars, Orion, Sirius, just as the Vedas and Sumerian texts did. These weren't random alignments, they were messages in geometry, echoes of a science that viewed the universe as one living design.